Mr. President, it is my great honor to present the Honorable Daniel K. Inouye, Law School Class of 1952, for the degree of Doctor of Laws.
Daniel K. Inouye, born in Honolulu, you began your life of public service while still in high school on a fateful day, December 7th, 1941, the day you witnessed the attack on Pearl Harbor. You had taken medical aid training and leapt into service, handling casualties as the head of a first aid litter team. In March 1943, you were a freshman at the University of Hawaii when you enlisted in the U.S. Army's 442nd Regimental Combat Team. For your service to your country on the battlefield, you were awarded a Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, and 12 other medals and citations. On June 21st, 2000, the President of the United States presented you with the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest award for military valor, for your extraordinary heroism in action and your devotion to duty. After the war, you returned to complete your undergraduate education at the University of Hawaii, and then went on to earn a law degree at the George Washington University Law School. You served as a deputy prosecutor for the city of Honolulu and entered politics in 1954 with your election to Hawaii's Territorial House of Representatives. You later won election to the Territorial Senate. When Hawaii became a state on August 21st, 1959, you won election to the United States House of Representatives as the new state's first congressman. In 1962, you were elected to the United States Senate, a position you still hold today. During your Senate tenure, you served on the Senate Watergate Committee and later chaired the Senate Select Committee on Secret Military Assistance to Iran and the Nicaraguan opposition, presiding over hearings into what became known as the Iran-Contra affair. Whether in the United States military, the territorial legislature of Hawaii, or the United States Senate, your work has been marked by unwavering loyalty to this nation and compassion for those who have traditionally been without a voice in government. You have been a devoted alumnus of the George Washington University, serving as a trustee for many years and now holding the status of trustee emeritus. For all the foregoing, the George Washington University proudly bestows upon you the degree of Doctor of Laws with all the rights, duties, privileges, and opportunities pertaining thereto. Congratulations.
With reflections upon the degree citation and the celebration of his life and accomplishments, let me again say how truly honored we are to have Senator Inouye as our guest today. When you think about the fact that he sat roughly where you're sitting these 50-plus years ago, it is an inspiration to think of what the road can yet hold for each and every one of you. Senator Inouye has indeed dedicated his life to public service, first in the armed forces and then in government for a staggering more than 6 decades. A nationally known leader and the third most senior member of the Senate, Senator Inouye has championed the rule of law and the role of law in improving the quality of life for all people, especially those with disadvantages, whether inherited or acquired. He has also played a major role in shaping the defense policies of the United States and has worked to strengthen the armed forces and to enhance the quality of life for military personnel and their families throughout the world. As a representative and then senator from Hawaii throughout its entire statehood, Senator Inouye has been a tireless advocate for the interests of Hawaii's people and broadened the scope of his concerns to all Native American peoples. He has fought for improved education and health care for all children, additional jobs for Hawaii's economy, health and human services in rural communities, affordable housing, and the protection of America's natural resources. He is an honored alumnus of our law school and a former member of the University Board of Trustees. In a time when this term is too easily used, I say without reservation that Dan Inouye is an American hero. It is my pleasure to introduce him and our honor to hear him speak with authority about the ways in which law has transformed our nation throughout our history, from the founding of the Republic through the days nearly 60 years ago when he received his own excellent education here at GW, through this very day of your graduation. Ladies and gentlemen and dear friends, please welcome the Honorable Dr. Dan Inouye.
If this introduction had occurred in August, I would simply say, I accept your nomination. Mr. President, Dean Lawrence, class of 2008, happy parents and spouses, ladies and gentlemen. A week ago, I spent 4 hours watching the first 4 chapters of the HBO special on John Adams. I wanted to do this because I needed to be reminded about the extraordinary pain, the misery, and the sacrifices that our founding fathers had to endure for an idea. And for this idea, they were willing to give up their lives, put their families in jeopardy, and lose whatever fortune they had. I was especially mesmerized by the scene of John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson debating the 35 words that serve as the heart of this declaration. It's been an important part of my life, these 35 words. And throughout my life, I found myself thinking about these 35 words during difficult moments of decision-making. I find I do this almost weekly. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our founding fathers adopted this extraordinary Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia on July 4th, 1776, knowing very well that to do so meant immediate death upon capture, destruction of their families, and confiscation of their properties. but they proceeded. They bravely took to heart this declaration, knowing that it was not possible to put that declaration into effect at that moment. This was a long-term matter that may take several generations. And after adopting the declaration, ironically, our founding fathers returned home to their farms, their homes, their shops, and there they were greeted and served by African slaves upon their return. But in their hearts, I'm certain that most of our founding fathers knew that slavery was wrong. But they were also sadly aware that the leaders and people of this new land were not quite ready to accept slaves as created equally. The 35 words that comprise the heart of this declaration have been read, reread, tested, condemned, and acclaimed. Nearly 80 years after the founding of our nation, these words were once again put to the test. It was a test that culminated in the Civil War, the war between the states, a war in which thousands upon thousands of our young men and women for both the Union and the Confederacy gave their lives because of their beliefs. Then, nearly 8 decades later, these 35 words were once again put to the test. And this was World War II, and I'm a member of that generation. 2 weeks after December the 7th, 1941, the government of the United States issued a regulation that proclaimed that my father, who was born in Japan, came to Hawaii to work in a plantation with his folks. He was then only 3. It also put my mother, who was born in Hawaii, her parents were from Japan, to work in the plantations. Together with my sister, my 2 brothers, countless numbers of cousins, they were declared by the government of the United States as unfit to be Americans. And some of our friends, several of my cousins who lived on the west coast of the United States, were given 24-hour notice to abandon their homes and their farms. And they were told that the only thing they could carry with them was what they can carry, not much more. And they were sent off to 10 desolate, far-off places, and they were confined in this wooden barracks, and they were ringed by barbed wire with machine gun towers with guns pointed inward. Our government, in its files, referred to these camps as concentration camps. Approximately 120,000 Japanese Americans spent part of their lives there, and some remained until the end of the war. And from these camps, hundreds upon hundreds of young Japanese Americans volunteered to serve in the United States Army and die if necessary. They were willing to place themselves in harm's way and die for this country which had incarcerated them without cause, and for only one reason, because they happened to look like the enemy. All Japanese Americans were given the official designation of 4C, which is a bit worse than 4F. It's enemy alien. That was my designation, enemy alien. For many of us, the impact of that label was personal it was an affront to our patriotism? Well, we petitioned the government because we wanted to demonstrate our loyalty and love for this country. We petitioned the government to permit us to volunteer, to enter into combat with the enemy, even if it meant fighting our cousins in Japan. Eventually, it happened. In January of 1943, the President issued a declaration, and he said, Americanism is a matter of heart and mind. Americanism was never a matter of race or color. This unit has the distinction of being the most decorated unit of its size in the history of the United States Army. And to the glory of our nation, 43 years after the end of World War II, by legislation and by presidential approval, this nation apologized for the wrongs. And I must say that as a citizen, I was very proud that our country was great enough to stand up and say we were wrong. Just think about it. Are there other countries that are willing to stand up and say we're wrong? However, in less than a generation after World War II, those important words, 35 words, were once again put to the test. And in this test, we found our streets bloodied with demonstrations. Cities were torched. People were killed. Our beloved leaders were assassinated. But we passed the Civil Rights Law of 1964 in the midst of all this. In so doing, we acknowledge that these 35 words were not only important but correct. I sadly believe that these words are once again being tested. They've been tested here at home and abroad. In this land of ours of democracy, equality, and plenty, there are millions of citizens who just cannot afford health care. So they're actually dying as we speak. And our economy is faltering for a growing number of Americans. And a little thing, such as a gas station, puts a crunch on the family budget. It might put a crunch so that you can't send their sons or daughters to school. And far from home, we're once again involved in a very unpopular war. I'm not proud of this because my colleagues did not go along. I was one of 23 senators who voted against the war. But it is not reassuring to tell my colleagues I told you so. And obviously, this war is opposed by a vast majority of our citizens. These challenges at home and abroad, making it very difficult for the people of our nations to get united once again. But the members of the class of 2008, it will be you and your generation that will carry the flag throughout this challenge. You'll have the opportunity to make these 35 words a reality for our fellow citizens. I know that at my age, I do not have many years left to fight the grand fight. And so I must tell you, I envy you. You have the opportunity to step forward and take some important steps to advance the words of Adams, Jefferson, Franklin, Washington, and our other founding fathers. And I hope that some of you will take very seriously and consider public service. It is very important because through you, we can make life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness become much more of a reality. So as you and your generation take your first steps forward to positions of leadership and influence and wealth, we're at a moment in history when we could soon have a possibility of a president of African American heritage. Just think about it. You know, it wasn't many years ago when racial discrimination was legal and accepted, even though the Civil War supposedly ended slavery. Sadly to say, racism is still alive and apparently doing well in many parts of this land. I still remember from my law school days of learning of a GW professor with a PhD. She was a white woman. She fell in love and married another American, but a Samoan. He also had a PhD. They got married and started to live in Virginia. A week later, they were told, get out or you'll be in prison. We had laws on miscegenation. I'm certain your professors taught you about miscegenation. But miscegenation laws are now illegal and unconstitutional. That's another sign of progress. We also have the possibility of having a woman as a president. "88 years ago, the women were in the back room. They did the cooking, the washing, and they weren't permitted to vote. Today, you might have a woman as the chief executive of this land. And this is a very significant step forward. We also have a man in the presidential race who wore our nation's uniform. He served our country and he spent 5.5 years in a terrible dungeon in Inouye. And I believe his service reflected a commitment of his to the important 35 words in our Declaration. To the class of 2008, I congratulate you for your hard work, and this has led to this moment. It's your moment, savor it. These moments don't come around too often. I wish all of you well. I also wish you will always hold close to your heart that document that defines our great nation and their important words. It begins with, we hold these truths to be self-evident. So God bless you all. God bless America.